What's up, guys? Saber TCG here, back again to talk about the 2025-2026 meta that I'm expecting to see, and the four decks that have really had a chokehold on this meta that I want to see how the trajectory will go for these big juggernauts of the meta, right? So we're going to be going over just kind of a preview of that. Maybe talking about some decks that I think will be really good picks for the meta, some that I think are good right now, maybe not so great in the coming months. Also, I'll be posting a video going over all the black and white cards that just released this Friday that will be tournament legal. Not this Friday, but next. And then once we have a full set of the Mega Evolution set, I'll do a review of that as well. But today, I really want to focus on what I think the current meta is going to be until we at least get to that Mega set. And then, you know, from where that will be when it comes to our tournaments like Pittsburgh Regional, the cups we have coming up, and so on and so forth. So the four I'm going to be talking about, of course, is the four you all know and maybe grown to love. It is Dragapult EX, Gardevoir EX, Raging Bolt EX, and then Grimmsnarl EX. Many versions of Dragapult. We now have two versions of Guardy, one being pure, one being the Jellicent version. We only have one version of Grimmsnarl, which I really think that deck will eventually have more versions or it won't stick. And then the Raging Bolt EX deck, which many people thought would never have more versions, but actually has a couple versions that people are playing it. But we just had a online tournament with over 1,500 players that we can really pull data from and try to look at it and see, maybe what the meta is kind of leaning towards. And then we'll go from there. The 1,500 people for an online tournament one is insane. So congratulations to Smart for running an insane tournament. I couldn't imagine having to run a tournament on a Monday night with 1,500 people. That sounds crazy. But as we can see, Pure Dragapult won the event, and then we have mini Dragapult Dusknoirs that we can see just right off the top. And Charizard has made a huge comeback, which is crazy. But not going to focus on Charizard. We may talk about him later. But let's just start with Dragapult, which is the list that won. And Umbermint, I think is their name. I know they are, from Peru. I didn't want to say their name wrong. I probably did say their name wrong, but we're gonna go over his matches. Well, first we'll go over his deck list. The deck list has the deck list is pretty straightforward, except now we have the two Hildas, and we are electing to play the Neo Upper Energy instead of the Unfair Stamp, which people have been gradually going towards playing the Neo Upper Energy anyways. So I knew once Hilda came out, that would probably be the pick of the ace spec. But this is a pretty straightforward list. It's very similar to what Tord was playing, except you just add the Hildas, right? Um, so nothing is really changing besides this Hilda card, and this Hilda, for those who are wondering, allows you to search your deck for an evolution Pokemon and an energy card. You reveal them and put them into your hand and shuffle your deck. I know Azul also played this deck. Probably today, yesterday, maybe played a version of this deck, and the Hilda is just extremely good for Dragapult. Getting to add the Neo Upper or Luminous is really big because this deck always has issues with just having energy, and you don't want to play Vessel because you don't want to get rid of stuff in your hand. And the energy, like search, the energy tracker, whatever it is, that just lets you grab a basic energy from your deck, is not great. Because what are you going to do? Waste an Arven on that? You don't really want to waste an Arven on that. And the Hilda just allows you, most of the time, what I've been seeing is it's letting you get a Dracloak. Obviously, it does let you get the Dragapult, but usually you can find the Dragapult naturally. It's getting started with your Dracloaks. Because the way that you lose with this deck is you're looking at Dreepies and you cannot find a Dracloak. And I know it may seem crazy because you have 4 Iono, 4 Research, 4 Ultra Ball, but it happens. It really does. I went through a local the other night, and I had 3 Dreepies on board, and I didn't see a Dracloak for 4 of my turns. Not the fourth turn, 4 of my turns. So we're on turn, I think, 9. Just crazy. Could not believe. I ended up getting Iono too. Um, and I just Iono'd unplayable. But obviously I lost because I just couldn't ever draw out of the situation I was in. And that's what Drake Lope lets you do. So the Hilda's extremely good in this deck. I think two's a perfect count. I'm still not too sold on the Brock Scouting, but everything else I think is perfect. A very good list. I think Dragapult is going to keep finding ways to adapt to the meta that allows it to be relevant. The Phantom Dive is just too good. 2 energy cost, 200 straight up, 60 on the board. I mean, the only thing that's really stopping this deck right now is decks that are running multiple monkeys, right? It's the only thing that's really stopping this deck. I'm curious to see how Dragapult plays into the bigger HP Pokemon when we have Megas. Will it slow it down? Will it matter? Because a lot of times Dragapult doesn't care if it can't knock something out, but it really likes to have an option to maybe counter in another Pokemon, do another 200 to knock that Pokemon out, and then the 60 finish off what you've already attacked. And the Mega Pokemon and the supporters with the Mega Pokemon, like the Wally, is going to prevent stuff like that from happening. So it really just, I guess, depends on how relevant the Mega Pokemon are and what we get out of that set. If we don't get a lot out of that set, it may not be a big deal. But I think this list is extremely solid. I would love to see its matchup with Gardevoir, because in my play testing, Gardevoir still seems hard. The Clefairy Mew play is still really good. Um, so I don't know how much the Jellicent affects the Dragapult. I'd really like to see. Let's go over the matches and see what he actually played. So it looks like started with a Gardevoir, then went to Raging Bolt, another Gardevoir, Typhlosion, Grimmsnarl, ends Grimmsnarl, Zard. It actually lost to the Zard. That's crazy because I feel like the Dragapult list should have a really good matchup against the Zard. But bad hands. I think this tournament was best of 1, so that stuff just happens. Grimmsnarl, Dragapult, Zard. Another loss to the Zard Pidgey list. That's crazy. Another loss to this list. I wonder if that's. I'm trying to think of what the Zards are playing, and it's not that much different now, right? I don't know. Maybe it was another bad hand. I don't know. He won, obviously, so it really, how big of a deal was it? But then beat the Bolts, one being All Out Blitzel, and then beat the Dragapult Dusknoir, beat another Dragapult Dusknoir, and then beat what it looks like Terrabox. I'd like to look at that list too, maybe at the end. But beating the 2 Dragapult Dusknoirs back to back is pretty good. That obviously is just one tournament run, so it can't really define how this deck should be ran or whatnot. But it does look promising to the mirror matches. Uberman didn't lose any against any Dragapult decks. Beat 3 Grimmsnarls, beat 2 Guardies, beat Raging Bolt Ogerpon, which Ogerpon Raging Bolt is supposed to have a good, a pretty good matchup against Dragapult. Not an amazing matchup, but especially if you're not playing the unfair stamp, Bolt has no troubles knocking out a Dragapult. And with the energy acceleration problems that Dragapult does have, sometimes that matchup is a little rough. But it looks like the Hilda may be changing that for this deck. So, really promising look from the deck. I really like the list. I'm going to try it very soon. So, that's pretty much it for Dragapult that I wanted to go over. We can look at one of the Dusknoir list, but it's pretty standard. But they are adding Vahilda. It pretty much boils down to if you're playing a main Dragapult list, so if you're not playing just Drake Lopes, if you're playing a main Dragapult list, you're probably going to want to play the Hildas. It just seems to be performing the best, and it's helping with a lot of consistency, which is always a plus. So, Dragapult still looking really good into this meta. I have no doubts that Dragapult will still be a top meta contender. We will review back. Excuse me. We will review back um, once Mega Evolution comes out. We'll come back and we'll say, what problems does Dragapult have now? As of right now, I don't see any, but time will tell. So then, let's start talking about Gardevoir. The elephant in the room. Gardevoir is, I still think, going to be a huge problem. It's probably still going to be the best deck. I think Gardevoir just has too much going for it, right? We have Brett Manley that got 10th at this event. And we'll look at his deck list, see maybe changes he's playing. He's actually not playing the Jellicent version. It looks like, I'll go back. It looks like the Gardevoir Jellicent list isn't anywhere in, let me see if it, yeah, okay. So the highest place in Gardevoir Jellicent list is actually 58th, and we have about 5 or 6 just pure Guardies. So I wonder if the Jellicent version is the best. It probably just hasn't been figured out yet, is what I'm assuming. If I had to guess. But if I know anything about Guardy, it's going to find a way to play in any meta. It's going to perform. If Jellicent is the correct version to play, someone's going to let us know about it, right? And they'll be everywhere. Even at your locals, I would expect people that you wouldn't expect to play Guardy to play Guardy Jellicent, because the Jellicent card is busted. I do think that card is really good. Even if the results really aren't showing it at this event, I do think once we get more events, once we get more testing with this deck, I do think a lot of people are going to be playing it more. But we'll go ahead and look at Grant's list. Pretty basic. They are playing the Flutter Mane, which I was talking to a buddy last night at the local about how Gardevoirs have just opted to not play Flutter Mane and Klefki, and that probably gives a good option for the Joltik Miraidon list to start running Thorns. It looks like Grant was prepared for that with the Flutter Mane. I do think the one Flutter Mane or the one Klefki, whichever one would be better for the meta, I do think that's important to be running right now. Just because I do think that Joltik Miraidon box list, whatever, with the Zekrom will become more popular as more testing comes along. And there's just going to be other decks playing the Jellicent, right? So playing the Flutter Mane really helps to negate that effect, or that ability that you're trying to get past. But everything else in this list looks pretty basic. It's a Guardian list, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? The only thing that they're not playing is the Mew, which probably hurts a little bit with your Dragapult matchup, but not that big of a deal because you still have the Clefairy, right? It can't be that big of a deal. And they are still playing the Screamtail, and then the 4 monkeys, of course. 4 monkeys is just a lot for Dragapult to deal with. Let's look at their matchups and see what all they played against. So, a lot of Raging Ball Ogerpon to start off, and Ethan's Typhlosion. I think these are extremely easy matchups, so kind of cruising these first 3 rounds. And then we get to the Gholdengo, and I'm sure this is the new Gholdengo list, and this is a hard matchup for Guardy. The only reason I think Guardy may fall a little bit out of the meta is if Gholdengo really shines like people are playing, because Azul just had a tournament that had so many Gholdengos get top 8. So it's something to definitely be looking out with, but looks like Grant didn't really struggle against it. And then we have the Miraidon Electrike deck. I guess they are differentiating the two in Limitless, so I wonder what's the difference between these two when they're differentiating them. But it looks like Grant beat both. Then the Typhlosion. Then the Dragapult Snoring. This is from Samu, who also topped, at least top 8, maybe top 4. This list will go back and look. Beat the Zard Pidgeot, which is another reason a lot of people are playing Zard Pidgeot is because of the matchup with Guardy. A lot of decks are trying to be Guardy right now, or a lot of people are trying to be Guardy right now. So they're playing these dark decks to beat that, the Grimmsnarl, the Zard, or they're playing the Steel decks that like beat the Clefairy, right, with like the Godango. But again, Grant did not struggle. Actually, having an insane first 10 rounds, just piling through everyone. Beat another Dragapult Dusknoir, and then lost to the Joltik box. So I do see Guardy just falling behind to an Iron Hands and losing. Actually tied with the Ethan Cyphlosion. That's crazy. I wonder what happened with that. A full 30 minutes and couldn't beat the either one of them couldn't win is crazy. But then got the bye in asymmetrical and then lost to the Zard Dusknoir. The Zard Dusknoir must be a miserable matchup for Gardevoir, honestly. That seems just like a really tough matchup. But overall, looks like Grant performed pretty well with this list. Exceptionally well. Don't let me downplay that. Um, but no Jellicent. Didn't run a Jellicent. Let's look at the Jellicent list just so we can get kind of a good idea of what we want to view Guardy as for the future, right? So this is Adam Kalamat. I probably missaid your name. I apologize. Playing the 3 Frillish, 2 Jellicent. I think I've seen the most 2-2. So the 3 Frillish makes me think that they're really focused on the Jellicent. And then a pretty standard Guardian line, 3 Monkey. Klefki again. Again, I do think it's really smart to be playing either the Klefki or the Fluttermane. I'm not sure which one's better right now, but definitely need to be playing both, or one of them, right? And then is playing the Mew, not playing the Screamtail, not playing the Clefairy, which is very interesting. I guess you're just really not worried about Dragapult and Bolt. One reason probably not worried about Dragapult is because you're playing De-Evolution with this list. So that's probably why you're not worried about it. Because you're just relying on this De-Evolution. And then everything else, pretty standard. But I do think this list is going to get refined by one of the big Guardy heads and will ball out eventually. And kind of just to wrap up Gardevoir, this deck's probably going to be good until it rotates. I'll just be honest with you. This deck's always going to adapt. This deck's always going to find a way, and it's getting a Mega. So, and the other support that's getting that we've seen, like the Curlia, the new stadium, the Psychic Stadium that lets you draw. Just be ready to play against this deck. Is what I'm going to say. Be ready to play against this deck because it's not going anywhere anytime soon. But then we'll go to the next deck we see, and that is Grimmsnarl. So Grimmsnarl has been slowly creeping into the meta, into the top tier, and I think every list is extremely standard, and we've hit kind of a plateau with this deck, which I don't like. I do think this deck needs to be pushed more. Definitely need to be pushing this deck more, and the only thing that's changed from the new stuff is one air balloon instead of the rescue board. So it's pretty standard stuff, nothing crazy. But this list is just good. I mean, it's really good against Guardy. I think it has at least, if not winning, a good matchup against both Zard and Pult. The only thing it really struggles with is this Electric Box deck. And then sometimes Raging Bolt. And I think, besides those two, I think you go in comfortably against everything else. And it's really just because of the consistency of Grimmsnarl, right? With you're not worried about getting stuck with the Badoo, getting Badoo locked. You're not worried about anything like that. You have the Spikemuth Gym to really just accelerate your Impidimps into Morgrams, into Grimmsnarls. It's just, this deck's all about consistency. You don't have to worry about putting any of your energy on anything except monkeys. It's just really solid. It's really solid. It pairs extremely well with Monkey Dory. The only thing that pairs better with Monkey Dory is Gardevoir. And then the Frostlass stuff is what I'm still questioning. I don't know if there's something better than this, but I would like to see this maybe pushed out into something better. Uh, but in testing, I do see why people play it. It is good, but I think there's something better. I don't know. Maybe there's not anything better right now, but maybe something in the future is better than this Frostlass, this 2-2. I think it's just inconsistent, and I think it's kind of just sits on your bench sometimes. And I mean, doing the damage, spreading out the damage is good, but a lot of times they just can't knock out your Grimmsnarl anyways, and so you just move the damage from your Grimmsnarl to whatever, and then knock whatever you need out, get the double KO, or do the D evolution line. So I don't know. We'll see. I still think that Grimmsnarl is really set up to be good in this meta. I don't see it having a lot of struggles with the upcoming meta. We'll review in the mega set because I do think it has a damage problem. Sometimes like Pult, where you're stuck to that 180 and you have to rely on the monkeys, and sometimes your opponent's just not going to give you an opportunity to do monkey damage, like the Bolt list that are just going to knock out a Grimmsnarl. They're not going to leave any damage on board, and you just have to deal with them. So we'll definitely see. I do think for at least till the mega set, I would heavily consider playing Grimmsnarl. I do think it's a solid pick, and as long as we find more things to add to it, Dark as a whole just doesn't synergize well with itself. For example, the psychic stuff that Gardevoir gets just seems to synergize so well. Dragapult always seems to be able to find that type of support like Hilda that just keeps pushing the deck forward. We just haven't had that for Grimmsnarl yet. So once we do get stuff like that, I do think the deck will get a lot better, and people do think that that's the best deck right now is Grimmsnarl. You could argue that any of the three that I've listed is the best deck right now. But let's go over the matches and see kind of where this player struggled with the Grimmsnarl list. We have that it looks like they lost to this bunny uh, playing Typhlosion twice. So that is very unfortunate. It looks like they, just hit a tourney demon, is what it looks like. But lost the first round and then proceeded to ball out, beat a Palafin. That is wild. That anyone took Palafin. I I don't know what to say with this man, but he was cooking something and it's burnt. Um, yeah. Anyways, let's continue. I could look at that for a while and get lost, but let's continue. Uh, beat two Gardevoir Jellicents. Seems like pretty standard. Beat an Eevee box. Beat a Typhlosion. Beat an Raging Bull Ogerpon, and then beat the Gholdengo. I'm actually curious to see how the Gholdengo Grimmsnarl matchup is. Because the Gholdengo can just knock out your Grimmsnarls and not leave any damage on board. So I'm really curious to how that matchup is. If Gholdengo has a good matchup into Guardy and Grimmsnarl and a pretty good matchup into Dragapult, that you're not hearing it from me, but potentially could be a sleeper best deck. Not sure. But this player didn't have any struggles with it. But I would like to see how this matchup goes and what people feel about it, especially Gholdengo players. And then beat Crustle. This is actually a pretty tough matchup for the Grimmsnarl. So it's actually funny that they beat the Crustle. Very funny that they beat the Crustle. I'm so glad we don't have anyone locals playing this deck. It's a big relief that no one's playing this because if someone was playing this at local, I do think they would just be beating people just off the principle because at your locals there's not a lot of Guardy, right? And I think if Guardy wasn't in the meta, I was looking at a matchup spread with Crustle. If Guardy wasn't in the meta, this deck has real potential to be good in the meta. Um, and like Ethan's Typhlosion. You take those two decks out, this deck's crazy. Anyways, this is not a Crystal video, so let's continue. Then lost to Eevee Box. I think the Eevee Box, when it gets going, man, it's good. So that doesn't surprise me. Beat the Dragon Ball Charizard. Grimmsnarl definitely has one of the better matchups against this particular version of Dragon Ball. Just two stage 2 lines that Grimmsnarl loves picking on. And then beat the Gardevoir, and then got to Top Cut, beat the Typhlosion, and lost to the same Typhlosion round 14. So, crazy tournament run with the Grimmsnarl Frostlass. Done the best out of all the players. So, very cool. Very cool to see. And then we'll go to All Out Blitzel's Raging Bolt Ogerpon list. I saw him post this on Twitter. I'm going to be honest with you all and just be straightforward. I think Raging Bolt is going to slowly fall out of meta. I don't care how good it's doing in Japan. I don't care how consistent you're telling yourself it is. This deck is just not great. What keeps this deck going is that when you brick, it's a lot. When your opponent bricks, it's a lot worse for them than if you brick. You can do stuff like the Burst Roar. You have the Sawdust that just gets you out of any jam. You can threaten with the Baby Bolt, right? But I don't have any hope that this deck will be a good pick to take to regional. I mean, it's the same list that we're seeing over and over and over, right? They just keep going back to different tech. And the Cornerstone edition that Blitzel done for this deck is good. I think it's good. I was actually thinking about this the other day because I played Bolt for a while, and I think this meta specifically, the Cornerstone's really good. But we'll go back and forth with Cornerstone being good. People are ready for it. The Cornerstone's bad, right? But I think, and you all have to go check out his Twitter or X or whatever it is. I think he said he only Bellowing Thundered like 9 times. He only Bellowing Thundered 9 times. Like, if that doesn't say enough about how I feel about Bolt, I don't know what else to say. And I've been the biggest Bolt boy for a while. Like, my first 2 cup tops were with Bolt. Like, this is my baby. Like, I do have a special place in my heart for Bolt. I just don't think it's good right now. Maybe it gets better later on. Maybe not. But Blitzel did mention that the Cornerstone was just tearing it up in this list. And I think it's a really good pick. I do. I think he was right on the money with it. It was a really good addition. And everything else is pretty straightforward, pretty standard. Elected to play the Iono instead of the Judge. I go back and forth with this card. I don't see a problem with either. And then everything else is pretty straightforward. And we'll see what Blitzel played against. Maybe it'll give us a good idea of what he's winning against and what he's losing against. So, beat the Gardevoir Jellicent. I do think that is a harder matchup. Beat the Grimmsnarl Frostlass. That's a good matchup for you. Beat the Gholdengo. That's another good matchup for you. Beat the Zard Dusknoir. I think old Zard used to be a problem for Bolt, just with the consistency of the Pidgeot and them just Ionoing you at the end and you not having anything. I think that really changes because we have the knocked out stuff now, because we really didn't see Bolt Zard a lot when we got knocked out, because Zard was slowly fading out of the meta because we got Badoo. So I do think that this matchup is probably even, maybe even Bolt favored. Then the Bolt Mirror match he lost, and then he beat the Gholdengo. I think you should beat the Gholdengo. I think this list should be beat Gholdengo if you know what you're doing, especially with the Cornerstone. Then lost to the Grimmsnarl Frostlass. won the mirror, beat Godango, beat the Grimmsnarl, beat the Ethan's Typhlosion, which is actually a awful matchup for the Raging Bull. It's actually miserable. So that's very impressive that he did win that. I would love to have seen that game. And then beat the Grimmsnarl Frostlass, and then beat a Crustle in Top Cut. I wonder how that plays out. That's probably you probably just do the cornerstone, right? Yeah, you probably just do the cornerstone. But that's very funny. And then lost to who eventually won the tournament, Umberment. Um, so it looks like Blitzel really didn't play against a lot of Guardy or a lot of Dragapult, but played out of the big three, played its best matchup in the Grimmsnarl Frostlass. He played it 4 times, and then played 3 Gholdengo, which I also think Bolt beats naturally. Especially now that they play the Genesect early, having that 2 prizer early is a real big deal for Raging Bull. Because if you take the first 2 prizes in that matchup, Gholdengo has to retaliate with either a Scizor, which you can go back at with a Slitherwing, or it has to retaliate with a Gholdengo, which you can just revenge knock out. Then it's 2 to 4. You're just in the driver's seat once you take that first 2. And now that they're playing the Genesect, and you probably have to play that matchup a little bit different. But now that they're playing that, it's just another 2 prizer that we can take and beat. And the only thing that would prevent the Gholdengo from also getting to you is the Cornerstone. So I do think that list specifically does have a good Gholdengo matchup. So you can say it's tournament luck, but Blitzel did ball out, not taking anything away from that. I mean, beat Typhlosion. I mean, I think the Typhlosion deck is a way worse matchup than the Gardevoir deck. And, yeah, so, but even with that, don't get it confused. I still think the Bolt list, or the Bolt deck, not Blitzel's list. I think Blitzel's list is really good. The Bolt deck is just not great. I think it's going to have the same problems that it always does. You're going to take it to a regional. It's going to have top 3 percentage in the room in day 1, and it's just going to completely fall off the map day 2. I just think that's how the deck is. It had its time in the sun, and I think it's just getting worse and worse. Maybe it gets better because the megas, people are having a hard time knocking out the high HP megas. But we'll have to see. If I was going to Pittsburgh and I was choosing between the 4, Bolt would be on the last of my list for sure. But that's pretty much it for the big 4. Let's go over some sleepers that we're seeing from this tournament, right? That may pop up more into the meta. So we have the Hubs 901 playing what it looks to be Terrabox. And that is exactly what it is. Terrabox with the Legacy Energy, electing to play the Legacy Energy instead of the Sparkling Crystal because we're not playing any Arven. I'm playing the Ogre Mask. And I was actually making fun of this card the other day. It's very funny. Choose a Pokemon EX in your discard pile that has Ogerpon in its name, and switch one of your Pokemon EX in play that has Ogerpon in its name. Any attached cards damage counter special condition turns in play, and any other effects remain on this Pokemon. So that's very interesting. I was memeing on this card just because I was saying, why would you play multiples of any of the Ogerpons and have them in the discard? But I guess what you're doing is you are pushing early game with the Wellspring, and then if they don't have a Cornerstone answer, doing the Cornerstone play. And then, of course, 2 Clefairy EX just to keep hitting, keep doing the high damage. But they're not playing any Area Zero or the Knockdown stuff. So this is not Terrabox. This is just Ogerpon. That is crazy. This is actually a crazy list. I wonder if Smart streamed this. I'd love to see this deck list in action. That's crazy. I can't even think about the win cons against certain decks. Like what if they play the Shaman, right? Like then your Wellspring's just not that great. Um, this is a very interesting list, and obviously I'm going to scroll down. I'm not going to see this list anywhere because there's only this one player. So let's look at their matches. Let's see what they're playing. Played against Dragapult, played against Slacking. That's very funny to see. Played Dragapult Iron Thorns. A lot of people I do see trying to bring this back. I still don't think it's good. Played against the Eevee box. Lost to Crustle. Yeah, I can see how this deck loses Crustle. Beat Raging Bolt. Beat Zard. Beat Zard. Lost to Guardy. Beat Raging Bolt. Beat Zard. Beat Grimmsnarl. The Ho-Ho Armarouge box. Beat Joltix. And then beat Zard. And then lost, obviously, to Umberment, excuse me. But went 14-3 with this list. Probably caught a lot of people off guard. Um, but really cool call out with this Overpawn list. That I expected to see Terror Box elements, and I saw none of that. So that was very cool. Very cool list. I don't know what relevancy it will have in the meta, but very cool list. That's not the list. Click on. Let's go to Zard. This Zard Dusknoir list. The Zard Dusknoir list is pretty much standard what we've been seeing here recently. The trainers people have been going back with is between Trolley and Hero's Cape. I prefer the Hero's Cape. I do think it's better. As you can see, Justin thought otherwise. He thought the Trolley was better. Playing a huge Dusknoir line with the 4-4-2. Which makes me think that they're really just trying to push the game forward as quickly as possible. They're playing the Trolley. I don't like the Trolley, honestly. I think you should just play 4 Buddy Buddy. And then, because you're already running Arven. And then put Hero's Cape. I think there's like 2 or 3 better ace specs in this deck. I think the Secret Box would be better. And I think the Hero's Cape is better. Even maybe a Maximum Bell is better. But this player, obviously, done extremely well, went 13-3. Let's look and see what they played. They played a lot of Grimmsnarl Frostlass. Played a Yanmega. Shout out Yanmega. That deck is absolute garbage. Played quite a bit of Zard Mirrors. Played against Crystal. Gholdengo. Did not play against a lot of Guardy. Played only against Grant. Asymmetrical top cut, and then ended up losing to the Overpawn list. So, very interesting list. I'm not a fan of how that list was set up, but there are other versions of Zard that done very well, such as the Pidgeot version, which we've all grown to know and love. This is pretty standard. I had some people at our local playing this list, except instead of the Maximum Belt, they are playing the Hero's Cape, which I do prefer. And I have been seeing the Mist Energy for certain matchups, like the Grimmsnarl, stuff like that. So I do think it's good. I think it's a good solid list. Are we seeing Zard make a comeback? I'm not sure. I have a love-hate relationship with this deck. I really like Zard as a card, and I really love Pidgeot as a card. I just don't know, right? I just don't know how I feel about it in this meta. We'll have to let this cook a little bit longer and see. But pretty good list so far. The Joltik box. Let's look at it. Let's see if they're playing the new stuff. Yeah, so this Joltik is not playing like the Zekrom, the Electrike stuff. It's not playing anything like that. It's playing just just plain standard Joltik box with a Genesect, which I do like. I do like the Genesect. I actually played Genesect in my Atlanta deck when I played Terapagos. I think that card is really good, especially when your opponent's not expecting it. So these best of ones, when you're setting up your board and you're like, next turn on Arven, get Secret Box, go off. Well, here comes a Genesect with like a Bravery Charm or an Air Balloon, right? So I do like this card. I do think Iron Leaves should be in every deck. that can run it, especially these Jolty Box, especially these Bolt List. I do think you should be playing the Iron Leaves because it beats the Zard, it beats the Grimmsnarl. It's just a good card to have right now, specifically. And then the Typhlosion, which I do have high hopes for Typhlosion. I do think it's getting a lot better with the Brave Bengal, which I'm assuming we are playing. Yes, playing two of, which I think is good. Playing the Secret Box, the Grav Mountain. Yeah, I think this deck has a lot of potential. With the new stuff that we got from Black and White, I do think that a one prizer deck in this format where we have so many two prizer decks, you could argue Guardy's like a 1.5 because it really plays two prizers when it wants to. It doesn't have to play them. I think a one prizer deck in a format like this is really promising. And now with the Brave Bengal, we're now able to knock out those pesky Dragapults, those pesky Zards that we were having a hard time getting to. Now this makes it a lot easier. So I do like this list. I do want to test it in the future. It looks very cool. Definitely be on the lookout in your play testing. Definitely play test with this deck. It could be a really good pick for this one. Let's look at some of the matches. Let's see what they played. Played Grimmsnarl, Bolt, Gholdengo, which it should beat. If Gholdengo is really good this meta, Typhlosion will be one of its biggest ops. Like, no joke. Typhlosion just spanks Gholdengo, like really bad. Then we have the Roaring Moon. Then we have the Enzoroark, which has kind of seen a fall. A lot of people are really testing out this Ends deck for the next format, and I'm not seeing a lot of it. But it did lose here, and then beat Raging Bolt, Crustle, Typhlosion, and then goes to beat Zard, Grimmsnarl, Crustle, and then ties with Guardy. I do think this deck does have an issue with Guardy. If this deck's matchup was a little bit better against Guardy, I'd have more faith in it. But I do think it does have a pretty meh matchup against Guardy. But yeah, definitely look out for that deck. I'm not even going to give Crustle an audience. So if you're expecting that, I'm not giving it to it. If you play that at a regional, I'm really sorry. But, that's just tough, man, right? The Ho-Ho box, or Ho-Ho Armarouge, is pretty standard what we've been seeing. They've been adding the Minior. That's how you say it. They've been adding the Minior, which is a hidden tech that all you Miraidon players know. So if there's any Miraidon players in the chat, you know who you are. You all were pioneers for this card, and it's made a comeback. But the Reshiram is kind of crazy. This attack does 50 more damage for each prize card your opponent's taking. So it's just the Zekrom, right? What the Zekrom is doing for the electric deck, Reshiram's doing it for this deck. So that makes sense for it to be in the deck. Completely understand. And then we just have the 1/1s. This is pretty standard. The Durant to hurt the Zard, to hurt the Grimmsnarl. Pretty standard stuff. And then the Legacy Energy. Yep, this is pretty standard. The only thing that's been added from the new stuff is the Reshiram. Let's see what they played against. Yeah, you should just beat Gholdengo with the weakness. Lost to the Grimmsnarl, beat the Zard, beat Dragapult Zard, beat Grimmsnarl, beat the Frostlass. I have been seeing Frostlass just pure with Muggies making a comeback. Beat the Gholdengo, beat the Crustle. Probably a decent matchup in Crustle. Beat the Grimmsnarl, beat Ethan's, tied with Joltik Box, and then ASIM ended up losing to that Ogerpon deck, which is very funny. Probably didn't have anything to do against the Water Ogerpon and Cornerstone. So, very cool stuff. And then, just going to go over a couple more things. I want to go over Eevee Box. I want to see what they're playing. Sanjay has been playing this deck for a hot minute now. I want to see what he is play testing with, if we're seeing anything new. Looks like they're still sticking with the Leafeon. It doesn't look like they're playing the Sylveon. So, Sylveon's like, meh. I ended up playing against EVBox at the last challenge, and they Sylveon'd, and then I just KO'd a Pokemon right after. So I think that card's kind of mid. I don't blame them for not playing it. This looks pretty standard. Playing the Sparkling Crystal, all the energy spread. Playing the Briar, which I do like. I do like the Briar, the late game Briar Terapagos play I've been seeing decks trying to incorporate, including Bolt. I did see that list. I do think that's pretty cool. Let's see what they played against. See what maybe they struggled with. Looks like they struggled against the Zard list, which I can definitely see. Even with the Leafeon, you know, I can definitely see it. If they just keep you off the EVs, they have the Pidgeot. They can always retaliate. That deck does not like getting Iono. They're going to Iono you to death. But besides that, lost to Godango. Ended up beating Rocket's Porygon Z. That brother went 1-7. That is Pokemon's strongest soldier there. That's crazy. Beat Gardevoir, beat Ends, beat Bolt, beat Typhlosion, beat a Godango, beat 3 Godangos. So that's pretty cool. This guy did not have a problem with Godango. The Flareon just puts in work against that Godango list. And then beat the Grimmsnarl Frostlass. So yeah, looks like struggling against what you would expect it to struggle against. The EVBox is good. I'm back and forth with it. I do think it's good. I just think it has consistency problems along with other stuff. And then the last thing I just want to cover and try to end on is the Godango, because the Godango is getting really popular. We actually had a Corbin guy who was in this tournament that played the Godango that done really well. So shout out to them. That's pretty hype. I know they were talking in the chat how well they were doing, so that's really cool. But let's look at this Godango list. We're back to the Scizor. All the Godangos I've been playing at in locals back to this card. I'm glad because I've always been a big fan of this card. Playing the 2 Genesect, and then just gas, just straight gas like it always does. The air balloons, of course, are being added to help with your retreat with your Godango, your Genesect. Just a really good card in this deck. Because the Arven, it felt like you were grabbing with Arven. You're either grabbing a TM Evo or you're just grabbing, like, fodder a lot of times. So, really good tool for this deck to have. And the Moonlight Heal, instead of the Lavencia, you can discard a basic energy card in order to heal 30 damage from your Pokemon. I guess that's like a Dragapult monkey counter. That's kind of cool. I do think the Lavencia is better. But that is cool. I do like that. But, yeah, everything else, pretty simple, pretty standard. Let's see what they played against and kind of gauge what they were struggling with. Struggled against, obviously, the Flareon list. Lost to a Grimmsnarl and then lost to Zard. Godango's always had a problem with Zard. It's always had a real issue with finishing Zard. I say that as the first 2 matches they actually beat Zard. So that I do think that is pretty impressive. Beat the Miraidon, beat the Grimmsnarl. Actually beat Sanjay in Phase 1, but ended up losing in Phase 2. That's unfortunate. That was probably a really good game if I had to guess. And then, yeah, beat the Raging Bolt. Pretty solid list. I do think this list is going to be pushed further and be really good. I do think it has the potential to replace Bolt in that top 4 echelon deck. I really am expecting it to. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the meta review. Appreciate everyone in the chat that's been talking and engaging, and appreciate everyone for clicking on the video and checking in on it. Like I said, we will be reviewing the black and white set soon, and then when we have the full set list for the megas, we'll be reviewing that as well. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you think is going to be some of the best decks coming up in the next meta, maybe what you're planning on playing at your cups, and in a couple months, the Pittsburgh Regional. And, yep, that should do it. Peace.